The knock at midnight. The night was quiet, too quiet for Ethan Cole's liking. The small colony house stood alone at the edge of the forest, far from the main settlement. Wind pushed against the walls and the metal roof creaked under the weight of the storm. Ethan sat near the dim heater, staring at the flickering blue flame. The old soldier didn't sleep much these days. Not after the war. He had fought too long, lost too much. Now he just wanted peace. Outside, thunder rolled like distant artillery. The rain fell hard, turning the dirt into thick mud. Ethan poured himself another drink and sighed. The only sound in his home was the hum of the generator. Then, a knock. A single, soft knock at the door. Ethan froze. Nobody came out here. Not at this hour. Not during a storm like this, he waited. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe an animal. But then, 3 slow knocks followed, clearer this time. Ethan stood, muscles tense. His hand moved automatically to the old pulse pistol on the table. Years of habit never left him. He approached the door quietly and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the sound of rain. He unlocked the safety latch and slowly pulled the door open. Just a crack. Cold wind rushed in, bringing water and the scent of wet earth. Outside stood a figure. A woman. She was drenched from head to toe, her thin cloak clinging to her form. 2 small shapes hid behind her legs, children. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Not human. The woman's skin shimmered faintly under the porch light, a soft silver blue glow. Her eyes were large and luminous like liquid crystal. Her lips trembled as she spoke, her voice weak but clear. "I was told, humans are kind," she said, "please. My children need a father." For a moment, Ethan just stared. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. An alien woman. 2 alien children. At his doorstep. In the middle of the night. He noticed her shaking hands, the bruises on her wrists, the small cut across her cheek. She wasn't lying. She was scared, exhausted. Ethan lowered his weapon a little. "You're hurt," he said. "Come inside before you freeze." The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. She turned to her children, both with the same glowing eyes, and whispered something in their tongue. They followed her inside, shivering. Ethan shut the door and turned up the heater. The warmth filled the small room, melting the tension slightly. The 2 children huddled close to the heat, whispering to each other in soft alien sounds. Ethan grabbed a towel and handed it to the woman. "Here," he said. "Dry off." She took it with shaking hands. "Thank you." "Human," he frowned. "Name's Ethan. I am Lyra," she said after a pause. "These are my children, Kale and Mira." The little ones looked up at him, frightened but curious. Ethan could see the same pain in their eyes, the kind only survivors carried. He poured her a cup of warm water and asked, "What are you doing out here? No ships land this far. You lost?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered. "We ran." Ethan repeated. "They killed my husband," she said quietly. "My people. They don't forgive those who help humans. They called me a traitor." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had seen that kind of cruelty before. Different faces, same hate. Before he could say anything else, Lyra's eyes widened in terror. "They're coming," she whispered. Ethan turned. "Who?" She stepped back from the window, pulling her children close. "The hunters. They followed us through the forest." Ethan moved to the door, checking the night again. The rain still poured, but through the darkness he saw it. A faint red light blinking between the trees. A tracking beacon. He cursed under his breath and grabbed his rifle. Lyra looked at him, trembling. "Please don't send us away." Ethan glanced at the terrified children and then at the weapon in his hands. He could have said no. He could have told them to leave. But something deep inside him, the soldier, the human, wouldn't allow it. He looked back at her and said quietly, "You're not going anywhere. Get the kids below, now." She blinked in shock. "You'll help us." Ethan nodded once, eyes cold but calm. "If they're coming, they'll wish they hadn't." Outside, the storm grew louder. Inside, Ethan Cole, the man who swore never to fight again, loaded his weapon one more time, and somewhere out in the dark, the hunters drew closer. The widow's story. The storm still raged outside, thunder shaking the small house as Ethan sealed the shutters. He moved fast, setting the safety locks and checking his weapons. The faint red light beyond the forest was still flashing, a warning that trouble was coming. Down in the storage room below, the alien woman and her children huddled near the heater. The children clung to her arms, wide-eyed and silent. When Ethan climbed down the metal steps, Lyra looked up at him with fear and confusion. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll burn everything to find us." Ethan crouched in front of her. "Then they'll find fire waiting for them," he said calmly. She blinked, surprised by his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not since her husband died. For a long moment, only the sound of rain filled the silence. Then Ethan asked, "Tell me what happened. Why are they after you?" Lyra's eyes lowered. "You humans call us Thalvin. We once fought your kind in the border war." "I remember," Ethan said. "I was there." Lyra hesitated, then continued. "My husband was a pilot. He believed in peace. When the war ended, we saw human prisoners starving in our camps. I gave them food, water. My husband helped me. When our people found out, they called us traitors." Her voice cracked slightly. "They executed him. I ran before they could take my children." Ethan said nothing. He'd seen death, but her words hit him deep. Betrayed by her own kind and for mercy. "They told me humans destroy everything," Lyra said softly, her glowing eyes watching him. "But you opened your door." Ethan sat back against the wall. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "If those hunters track us here, none of us are walking out easy." Lyra tilted her head. "You sound like a man who's tired of fighting." "I am," Ethan replied. "But I'm worse at watching innocent people die." Her lips curved faintly, a tiny tired smile. "Then maybe there's still hope for your kind." Ethan checked the scanner on his wrist. A faint blip flashed. 3 life forms moving closer through the forest. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach the ridge," he said. He moved to a locker and opened it, revealing a small set of old military armor and ammo belts. Lyra's eyes widened. "You were a soldier?" "Once," he said, pulling on the chest plate. "Now I'm just a man who doesn't like uninvited guests." The youngest child, Mira, tugged on Lyra's sleeve. "Mother," she whispered in her soft alien tongue, "will he keep us safe?" Lyra hesitated. She looked at Ethan, scarred, tired, yet somehow steady like a mountain. "Yes," she said quietly. "He will." Ethan heard her but didn't respond. He loaded the rifle, checked the door locks again, and set up the power dampeners to hide their signal. "You said they tracked you?" he asked. "How?" Lyra pointed to a small silver band around her wrist. "They use this to find us. It's a family tag. Every Thalvin child carries one. It cannot be removed." Ethan frowned, studying the device. "Not unless you know how to fry its frequency." He walked over to his workbench, pulling out an old signal disruptor. "Hold still." The children clung to Lyra as Ethan worked carefully, adjusting the field. A spark flashed, and the metal band popped off with a hiss. The scanner on his wrist went blank. No more tracking signal. Lyra gasped, looking at him in awe. "How did you—" "Human stubbornness," Ethan said, a faint grin breaking his cold face. For the first time since she arrived, Lyra let out a small, nervous laugh. It sounded strange, fragile but warm, but the moment didn't last. The scanner blinked again. 5 new signals appeared, closing fast. Ethan's eyes hardened. "They're not giving up." He handed Lyra a small pulse pistol. She shook her head. "I don't kill. Then stay behind me," he said. "And keep your kids low." She looked at him, her voice trembling but sure. "You risk your life for strangers." "Why?" Ethan met her gaze. "Because once someone did the same for me." Outside, lightning tore across the sky. The forest howled under the storm. Shadows moved between the trees. The hunters were here. Ethan stood at the doorway, rifle in hand, eyes cold and ready. Down below, Lyra held her children close, whispering prayers in her alien tongue. And above them, thunder roared as the human soldier prepared to fight again. The hunters arrive. The night was alive with thunder. Lightning flashed over the forest, lighting the wet leaves and broken branches. The rain had slowed, but the air was heavy, full of the kind of silence that always came before violence. Ethan Cole stood near the window, his rifle ready, his heartbeat steady. Years of war had trained him for nights like this. The sound of approaching footsteps, the smell of wet soil, the quiet fear in the air. It all felt too familiar. Down in the cellar, Lyra kept her children close. Her hands trembled as she tried to keep them quiet. The small heater's light flickered across her silver blue skin. Every time thunder rumbled, Mira whimpered softly, and Lyra whispered a calming tune in her alien language. Ethan heard the faint hum of energy rifles outside. His eyes narrowed. The hunters were close, or too close. He crouched near the door, watching through the slit in the shutter. Then he saw them. 3 figures moved through the rain, tall, armored, and glowing faintly in the dark. Their armor had the same blue shimmer as Lyra's skin. Thalavan hunters. The leader raised a scanning device. Its beam swept across the ground and stopped near Ethan's house. They'd found them, Ethan whispered under his breath. So it begins. He moved silently through the room, switching off the lights. The house fell into darkness. He took cover behind the main doorway, setting a small EMP mine near the entrance. His plan was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and protect the family below. Outside, one of the hunters spoke in a harsh alien tone. The words buzzed through Ethan's translator. Thermal traces confirmed. The traitor is inside. Ethan smiled grimly. Let's see you confirm this. The door suddenly exploded inward, a bright flash of plasma fire and smoke. One hunter charged in, his weapon raised. But before he could take a step, Ethan triggered the mine. Boom! The blast threw the hunter back into the mud. Sparks danced over his armor as systems failed. Ethan stepped forward, firing 2 quick shots. The rifle's pulse beams hit clean, one in the chest, one in the shoulder. The alien fell still. Target neutralized, Ethan muttered. 2 more to go. Outside, the other 2 hunters roared in anger. One shouted through a comlink, "Human signature confirmed! Eliminate him!" The second hunter circled around to the back of the house. Ethan heard the crunch of boots on wet wood. He quickly moved to the side window, crouched low, and waited. As soon as the shadow passed, he fired. The window shattered, and the hunter stumbled back, roaring in pain. But the last one, the leader, was smart. Instead of attacking, he stayed quiet. A red beam from his scanner cut through the dark, locking onto the cellar door. Ethan saw it too late. No! The cellar hatch burst open. The metal door ripped off its hinges. Lyra screamed as the leader dropped down into the underground room, weapon glowing bright. Ethan ran, sliding down the ladder. The leader had his blaster aimed at Lyra's head. The 2 children hid behind her, crying. "Don't!" Ethan shouted. The alien turned slowly. His voice was cold and sharp. "You protect the traitor? Foolish human. She is ours." Ethan didn't hesitate. He fired. The blast hit the alien's weapon, sending sparks flying. The children screamed as the 2 men clashed, steel against steel, strength against rage. The alien slammed Ethan into the wall, his armor heavy, his strength unnatural. Ethan grunted, swinging the butt of his rifle hard against the hunter's helmet. It cracked, exposing the glowing eyes beneath. "You think humans are weak?" Ethan growled. "You should have stayed home." With one final strike, he drove the alien backward into the power conduit. Electricity surged, filling the cellar with bright blue light. The hunter screamed "Murr" and fell silent. Smoke filled the room. Lyra stared at Ethan in shock. He was bleeding from his shoulder, breathing hard, but still standing. Ethan wiped the sweat from his face. "You okay?" Lyra nodded slowly, tears running down her cheeks. "You saved us." Again. Ethan looked down at the dead alien and then at her. "They won't stop now," he said quietly. "You said they'll burn everything to find you?" She nodded, fear returning to her eyes. Ethan grabbed a pack from the wall and started gathering supplies. "Then we can't stay here." He turned to Lyra and the children. "Get ready. We move before sunrise." Lyra hesitated. "Where will we go?" Ethan glanced toward the dark forest outside. Lightning flashed, revealing the mountains beyond. Somewhere they'll never think to look. The little girl reached out, taking Ethan's hand. "You're not afraid?" she asked softly. Ethan gave her a tired smile. "I've been afraid before," he said. "This time, I've got something to fight for." Outside, the rain finally stopped, but the danger was far from over, because deep in the forest, More red lights began to appear, one after another. The hunters were calling reinforcements. And the chase had only just begun. The safe house. The night faded into a gray dawn as Ethan guided Lyra and her children through the dripping forest. The storm had ended, but mist clung to the ground like smoke. Every step was slow, careful. The sound of breaking twigs could mean death now. Behind him, Lyra carried her youngest child while Kale, the older one, held Ethan's hand tightly. They were exhausted, their faces pale, their feet muddy. But Ethan didn't stop. He knew the hunters would come again. The Thalvan never left unfinished work. "Where are we going?" Lyra whispered as they climbed a narrow ridge. Ethan pointed toward the distant mountains. "There's an old mining outpost in those hills. I used it years ago. It's off the grid. No signals, no satellites." Lyra nodded silently. She didn't ask more questions. The way he spoke, calm, confident, controlled, made her trust him without realizing it. After hours of walking, the trees thinned, revealing a hidden valley below. Rusted mining towers rose from the fog like broken bones. Ethan led them down a rocky path, finally stopping at a small bunker half buried in the ground. He entered the code manually, and with a low hiss, the door opened. Inside, the air was stale but dry. Dust floated in the dim light of old lanterns. The room smelled of metal, oil, and old memories. Ethan checked the systems quickly. "Still working," he muttered. Not bad for something forgotten. The children ran to a corner, exploring the dusty crates and scattered tools. Lyra placed, her hands on the metal wall, whispering softly, "We're safe?" "For now," Ethan said, "but don't let that make you careless." She nodded, watching him as he moved through the room with quiet purpose, checking vents, power relays, and scanning for signals. His movements were sharp but gentle, like a man used to danger but careful not to scare those behind him. When the lights finally came on, the room glowed faintly gold. Lyra looked around, amazed. "You built this?" "Found it," Ethan replied, setting his rifle aside. "But I made it livable." She smiled faintly. "It feels peaceful." Ethan almost laughed. Peace is temporary. Always is. Still, seeing the relief in her eyes, something inside him softened. He hadn't felt that kind of connection in years. Not since the war. Not since he'd stopped believing people deserved saving. Later, while the children slept near the heater, Ethan cooked a small meal, just ration stew, nothing fancy. The smell filled the small room, warm and simple. Lyra sat across from him, her silver hair catching the dim light. "My husband used to make something like this," she said quietly. "When we still had a home." Ethan didn't answer right away. He just stared into his bowl. Finally, he said, "War takes everything. Sometimes, even the parts of us we don't know we'll miss." Lyra looked at him, seeing the weight in his eyes, the pain he never spoke of. "You've lost someone too," she said softly. Ethan nodded once. A lot of someone's. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a quiet understanding, the kind that only survivors shared. Then Lyra said something that made his chest tighten. "You risked everything for us. You could have let us die." Ethan looked at her, his voice low. "Yeah, I could have." He didn't say why he didn't. Maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he did. Maybe it was the way her children looked at him, like he was something solid in a world that kept breaking apart. The moment was broken by a sudden crackle from the comm unit. Static. Then a voice. Deep. Distorted. "Thalvan command to all units. Priority Alpha target. Lyra Ven Shah. Capture alive. Human male assisting. Kill on sight." Ethan froze. Lyra's eyes widened. The voice continued. Bounty tripled for confirmation. Then silence again. Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're broadcasting it on open channels. Every hunter, every smuggler will be after us now." Lyra's voice trembled. "They'll never stop." Ethan stood, checking his weapons. "Then we don't stop either." She looked at him, fear in her voice. "What are you going to do?" He glanced at her. Calm, certain. "Buy us time." Outside, wind howled through the valley, carrying the faint sound of distant engines. Lyra ran to the doorway as Ethan stepped out, his coat flapping in the cold breeze. "Ethan," she called after him. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't turn around. "Because I promised you'd be safe," he said simply. Then, under his breath, a whisper lost in the wind. "And because I don't break promises anymore." Far above the valley, lights flickered in the sky. Ships. The hunt was starting again. But this time, Ethan Cole wasn't running. He was waiting. The trap. The sun had barely risen, but the world already felt dangerous. A pale red sky stretched over the mountains, painting the metal ruins of the old mining valley in ghostly color. Ethan stood outside the bunker, scanning the horizon with his rifle in hand and his jaw tight. He hadn't slept. Neither had Lyra. She watched him from the doorway, holding her children close. "They'll find us soon," Ethan said quietly. "The broadcast went far. Someone will take that bounty." Lyra's eyes flickered with worry. "You think they'll come here?" "They'll come everywhere," he replied. "That's why we have to leave before nightfall." She hesitated. "Leave? But where?" "An old smuggler's port 30 clicks south. If we reach it, I can get you off-world. Somewhere the Thalvan won't look." Lyra nodded slowly, but there was fear in her eyes. "And you?" Ethan gave her a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll get you there first, then I'll figure out the rest." He turned back toward the hills. Something in the distance caught his eye. Smoke, faint but rising. He lifted his scanner and frowned. "That's not natural." Lyra stepped closer. "What is it?" "Engines," Ethan said. "Someone's already moving toward us." He packed fast. Weapons, food, power cells. Within minutes, they were moving again, following an old mining trail that led through the canyon. The path was narrow, walls high on both sides. Lyra carried Mira in her arms while Kyle walked beside Ethan, clutching his hand. The boy didn't speak much, but his small face was brave. Ethan could see the same quiet strength his mother carried. Hours passed. The sun rose higher. The air grew dry and sharp. Ethan's instincts screamed that something was wrong. Too quiet. Too easy. When they reached the end of the canyon, the truth hit him. The smoke he'd seen earlier wasn't from engines. It was a flare. A beacon. They'd been led straight into a trap. Ethan stopped suddenly, raising his hand. "Don't move." Lyra froze. "What's wrong?" He scanned the rocks. Motion sensors, tripwires, they knew we'd come this way. Before he could say more, the sky split with the sound of engines. 3 Thalvan dropships descended from the cliffs above, kicking up dust and wind. Soldiers in dark armor rappelled down ropes, landing in a tight circle around them. Lyra gasped, pulling her children behind her. Ethan lifted his rifle, but he was outnumbered 10-1. A tall figure stepped forward, the Thalvan commander. His armor gleamed black and silver, his helmet carved with the marks of many kills. When he spoke, his voice carried a cruel calm. "Ethan Cole," he said, "the human ghost." I expected more. Ethan kept his rifle steady. "You'll get more than you asked for." The commander laughed softly. "You protect a traitor to her own kind, for what? A reward? Love?" Ethan didn't answer. He only said, "Because she didn't deserve to die for being good." The commander raised his weapon. "You do not decide who deserves to live." The moment stretched thin. Then, gunfire. Ethan moved fast, dragging Lyra behind the rocks. The air exploded with plasma bolts, dust flying everywhere. He fired back, hitting one then another, but there were too many. Energy beams cut into the stone walls around them. A blast hit near his feet, throwing him off balance. He rolled, shouting, "Run!" Lyra grabbed the children and bolted toward the ridge, her heart pounding. Ethan covered them, firing until his rifle overheated. One of the dropships swung low, blocking their path. The commander landed in front of Lyra, weapon drawn. "Enough!" he barked. "The woman comes with us." "The human dies!" Lyra screamed as soldiers grabbed her arms. The children cried, clinging to her legs. Ethan tried to get up, but a bolt of plasma hit his shoulder, burning deep. He fell to one knee, pain blinding him. The commander walked toward him slowly. "You were brave, human. But bravery dies like everything else." Ethan looked up, bleeding, barely standing. "You should have brought more men," he said, then lunged forward, slamming his blade into the commander's chest plate. Sparks flew. The armor held, but the impact knocked him back. Before Ethan could strike again, a soldier hit him from behind. He fell hard, his weapon clattering across the stones. Lyra screamed his name as they dragged her away. The last thing Ethan saw before blacking out was her face, her glowing eyes full of tears, her children reaching toward him, and the commander's cold voice saying, "Take her alive. Leave the human to die." Then everything went dark, fire and fury. The world returned to Ethan in pieces. Pain first, then light, then the taste of blood in his mouth. He opened his eyes slowly. Everything was blurry. The sun was setting, turning the canyon red like spilled fire. His body ached. His shoulder burned where the plasma had hit. The air smelled of smoke and metal. He was lying among the ruins and broken rocks, shattered armor, and silence. The hunters were gone. Only the wind answered him now. For a long moment, Ethan didn't move. He could barely breathe. Every muscle screamed. But then a memory hit him, Lyra's scream. The children's cries. The commander's cold voice, and that was enough. He forced himself up, gasping. Blood soaked his sleeve, but he tore a strip from his jacket and wrapped it tight around the wound. His eyes hardened. He wasn't dead yet. He stumbled toward the wreck of a Thalvan dropship nearby. Smoke poured from its hull. Inside, sparks danced across the consoles. Ethan climbed in, teeth clenched, searching. He found what he needed, a functioning comlink, half-broken but still alive. Static filled the air until a voice came through. Commander Threx reporting. Human neutralized. Taking the traitor and her spawn to Outpost Delta 4 for extraction. Delta 4. Ethan remembered that name. It was an old human prison base from the war. One he'd helped destroy years ago. The Thalvan must have rebuilt it, he whispered to himself. You made a mistake taking her there. He grabbed a data stick from the console, downloaded the coordinates, and limped out of the wreck. The storm had passed, but something new burned in his chest. Not anger, not hate, but purpose. He spent the next few hours scavenging what he could. From the dead hunters, he took weapons, armor, and ration packs. He stripped one of their rifles, rebuilding it with human tech from his pack. A hybrid weapon. Brutal, precise. When he looked at his reflection in the cracked glass of his visor, even he didn't recognize himself. Half soldier, half ghost, night fell. The stars came out, bright and cold. Ethan started walking, one step at a time, toward Delta 4. Far away, inside the alien outpost, Lyra sat chained to a steel wall. Her children were in the next room, guarded by soldiers. Every sound made her heart jump. The commander, Threx, paced before her. You could have lived peacefully, he said. You chose a human. You disgraced your kind. Lyra lifted her head. Her voice was soft but steady. He's more of my kind than you'll ever be. Threx struck her across the face, leaving a glowing mark. You still defend him? She met his gaze, unflinching. Always, Threx smiled coldly. Then you can die watching him burn. He left the room and the door slammed shut. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering a single word into the darkness. Ethan. Hours later, a tremor shook the outpost. The guards looked up, confused. The ground shuddered again. Then, a massive explosion from the outer gate. Ethan had arrived. Fire and smoke filled the night. He moved through the chaos like a shadow. Using the alien rifle with deadly precision, one by one the guards fell before they could even scream. The hybrid armor absorbed most of their fire, but each hit made him stagger. He didn't care. Pain didn't matter anymore. He fought with purpose, with fury. Every step brought him closer to the woman and children who'd given him a reason to fight again. Inside, alarms wailed. Red lights flashed. The commander barked orders, but it was too late. Ethan stormed through the corridor, tearing down metal doors, leaving only silence behind him. He reached the holding room. Lyra looked up, her glowing eyes wide in disbelief. Ethan? He shot the lock open and stepped through the smoke. Miss me? Tears filled her eyes. You came back? Didn't promise to leave you, he said simply. The children ran to him, clinging to his legs. He knelt, touching their heads gently. You okay, little ones? They nodded, trembling but safe. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. The commander entered, energy sword drawn. His armor burned from the earlier blast, but his voice was steady. "You should have stayed dead, human." Ethan turned to face him. "I tried," he said. "Didn't work." The two charged at each other, human and alien, fury against pride. The clash was brutal. Sparks and blood filled the air. Ethan fought like a man with nothing to lose and everything to protect. At the final moment, he caught the commander's sword arm and drove his hybrid blade straight through the alien's chest. The light in Threx's eyes faded as he fell. Ethan stood over him, breathing hard. "That's for her husband," he whispered. "And for me." He turned back to Lyra. "Let's go home." They escaped the burning base as dawn rose behind them, the sky blazing orange and gold. Lyra looked at him, tears glinting in the light. "You came through fire for us." Ethan smiled faintly. "You said your children needed a father." And together they walked into the morning, toward freedom, toward something new. A new dawn. The horizon glowed gold and silver as the first light touched the valley. Smoke from the destroyed Talvan base drifted into the sky, fading slowly with the night. The battle was over, but the world felt strangely silent. Ethan walked ahead, the morning breeze brushing across his face. His shoulder still hurt, but the pain felt distant now, small compared to the storm inside him finally calming. Behind him, Lyra and her children followed closely. The little ones were quiet, tired but safe. They had walked for hours through the mountains until they found an old human outpost half buried in the rocks. It wasn't much, rusted walls, broken windows, but it was shelter. Inside, Ethan found a working generator. The lights flickered weakly to life. The hum filled the small room, warm and familiar. Lyra looked around the dusty place and gave a small smile. "It's peaceful." Ethan nodded, checking his rifle before setting it aside. "It'll do." For now, he turned to her. The side of her face still bore the faint mark from the commander's strike. He reached out, gently touching it. "Does it hurt?" She looked into his eyes. Not anymore. For a long moment, they just stood there. Two survivors surrounded by silence, breathing the same air again. Then Mira, the smaller child, tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Are we safe now?" Ethan crouched down, meeting her big, uncertain eyes. "For now, yes. But we'll have to keep moving soon. The Thalvan won't stop looking." Kale, her brother, frowned. "You'll protect us, right?" Ethan smiled faintly. "That's the plan, kid." He ruffled the boy's hair and Kale giggled. The sound soft, fragile, but real. For the first time in days, it didn't feel like running. It felt like living. Later, as the sun climbed higher, Lyra stood outside the outpost, watching the golden light spill over the horizon. Her hair shimmered faintly in the morning wind, her eyes thoughtful. Ethan joined her, standing beside her in silence. The valley stretched out below them, quiet, almost beautiful now that